Welcome back to Library Trust YouTube channel. Today we'll be learning how to make a smoky dress. Okay, so to do this you just need your fabric and your normal thread, and this type of thread is called smoky thread. Actually, you can get it at any tailoring material store, and it is stretchy actually. So once you pull it like this, it stretches. Once it is pulled like this, it stretches. So that is how you know it. This is a smoky thread, this is the normal thread. So I'll be using both. I'll be using this fabric, it's a cotton fabric. So let's get to it. So I'll be making this dress for a 3-year-old, and it's a simple off-shoulder flare dress. So the half length part is what we'll be smoking. Okay, and to do this I'll be folding the material using the largest circumference part of her measurement. So I bust, that's her chest, because they don't have bust. The chest line of the child I'm working with is 20 inches and the waist is 22, so which means the waist is the largest circumference, and I'll be working with the waist. But because we are smoking it, which means it's a form of gathering, I cannot use the actual 32 inches measurement, so I'll be doubling that measurement. So instead of measuring 22 inches, I'll be measuring 22 times 2, which will give me 44 inches. So unfold now, I'll measure 22 inches so that by the time I stretch it out, it becomes 24 inches. You can decide to add allowance to it or not, but I think 22 inches is okay because I don't want it too big at the end of the day. So I'll be measuring this hat now. Okay, so I have 22 inches here on fold, and by the time I open it up, it becomes 44 inches. And the length that I'm working with, the actual half length is 9 inches. Okay, the half length is 9 inches and it's going to be an off shoulder. So I'm going to be removing 3 inches for the off shoulder part, and then I'll be left with the 9 inches. But I didn't make it exactly 9 inches because I'll be hemming it on top of the fabric here. I'll be hemming it like this, and then I'll be joining my flare to it on the down part. So that was why I added allowance. And also, if you notice, I just cut a long strip, which means there will be no side seam in this dress, because it's not going to be a tightly fitted dress. I don't need to put a side seam. It can be worn easily because this is not the actual measurement. Remember, the actual measurement was supposed to be 22 and I doubled it already, so there is enough room and it will stretch. So there's enough room to wear this dress. So now I'm just going to hem this upper part and then start to sew my smoky pattern on the dress. So this is an example of a smoky dress that I already made. So this will help us to understand this better. In this dress, you notice that we only have one seam at the center back here. There is no side seam on this dress, and it stretches very well. You can see it is easy to wear because it stretches, so the child will be able to wear it easily. Okay, and in the case of this dress, I smoked it from the upper part up to the half length area, and then I just left what is left, so it will just gather it for you and make it feels like a gathered dress effect. Okay, so the same thing that I did here, running stitches straight around like this just to gather it together to give me this smoky effect. This is what I'll be doing on this also. So now to smoke it, I'll take my smoky thread and then my reeler. So this is my smoky thread and this is my reeler. I'll not be reeling this using the machine. I'll be reeling it using my hand. I'll just be turning it, putting it together like this with my hand. When I'm doing this, I'm not going to stretch it so that it will not lose its elasticity. So you just keep rolling it around like this till you fill up the entire reeler. Okay, so I'll be doing this by hand. I prefer to do it because the effect that it gives me is better. It gathers it more instead of just stretching it and all the elastic is gone, or even before you start sewing it. So I'll take my time to reel it, wrap it around each other like this until the reeler is filled up. Okay, so like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is to hem the upper part of the dress, of the fabric, like this. As you can see, it is neatly finished. I've hemmed it. This is the lower part, still rough. So this upper part has been hemmed. Now I'll start to smoke it. So to smoke it, I'll just take my shuttle and place the elastic inside it. If it is too tight, there is a knot here, you may want to just loosen it a bit so that the elastic can come out of it easily, but mine is okay like this. So I'm just going to pass it and see if it comes well, and I can see that it is easy for it to come out. So I'm going to be putting this under my machine, and then I'll be using a normal thread on top. Okay, so I'm using a normal regular thread on top of the machine, you can see, and I'll be using the elastic. I've passed this under it, so I'm bringing it out now, and you can see the elastic. So the elastic will be down and the regular thread will be up. So now I'll start to sew it. So I'm going to sew it by just placing my fabric under the machine like this, but because I want it to have like a ruffles at the beginning like this, so I will not be starting from the uppermost part. I'll just measure like ½ inch down before I start to smoke it. So I'll take my measurement. You can note this with your with marker, or you just eyeball it. So now I'll be measuring just like 3/4 inch, and then I'll start to smoke from that point. Okay, so now what you do is just pedal your machine and then continue like this, so it will gather. And as you can see, it's showing like a gather, is not straight, and if you stretch it, you can see that it is a bit stretchy. So you continue like that, and then it will be gathering it on its own. You don't need to stretch it, you don't need to drag your fabric, just keep sewing. So that is what I'm going to be doing until it gets to the end. So I've sewn it to the end. Now I'm just going to lock it and then bring it out. So once I bring it out, I'll cut it off. And so now that this is what we have. If you stretch it, you can see that it is stretchy and it is getting smaller. So on the other side, you can see what it's looking like. The smoky thread will just gather it for you. It will help it to gather on its own. You don't need to drag it or just stretch it. It will just gather the fabric, and you can see what it's looking like on the outside. So now what I'm going to do is I'll continue sewing it just the same way I did for the first one, and continue sewing it straight like that, line by line, until I fill everything up with smoky thread. Okay, so I've gathered a little bit of it, almost half of it now. I can see how the fabric is now shrinking from a 44 inches fabric to what we have here. And if you spread it, you can see that it stretches. Okay, so it's very simple to make this. And this is the other side. You can see how the smoky thread is just gathering it for us, as you can see. And if you I came to show us this so that I'll let us know if you want to, let's say you want to make this as a full dress. So what you just need to do is your length measurement will be your full length, and then you stop gathering maybe on the half length or wherever you want to gather your smoky design to stop. So once it stops, it just gathers the rest of the fabric for you like this, and this to become a full dress. Okay, just like the dress that we have here. So there is no need for joining at the half length. You don't need to join it. Just measure your full length, smoke it to your half length or wherever you want it to be, and then leave the rest. So the rest will become gathered like this, and it will give it a very beautiful look. Okay, so now I just have to show us this. I'm going to go over to the machine now and fill up the rest of the place of the fabric with a smoky thread. But just a tip, once it becomes gathers like this, when you're sewing it, you need to be stretching out the fabric so that you will not be sewing on the gathered part, because you have to sew on the flat fabric like this. So if you are sewing it, you just need to spread it out like this, stretch it a bit, and then continue gathering it. So you just stretch it out. You stretch it out so that you don't sew on the part that is piled up, and then you continue sewing. So when you sew, you stretch it and then you continue like that. I've smoked everything and you can see how small it's looking. Okay, so I just cut off the threads, and that is how you smoke your dress actually. So this is what we have. When it's unfold, this is all that we have. And now I'm going to measure it so that you can see what we have left of our 44 inches fabric. So if I'm measuring from one end to the other, I don't want to stretch too much. I have around 17 inches, but the good thing is that this 17 inches can stretch to the 44 that we started with. So now I'm going to continue making my dress. So for this dress, the joining will be at the front. So I'm going to create like a buttonhole illusion, okay, using my fabric. Okay, so to create my illusion, I measured the length that I have now, and the length I have is around 7 inches. Okay, so I used that same 7 inches length to cut out two fabric of 7 inches length and 3 inches width, two separate fabrics. So what I'm going to do now is to sew this fabric like this, just like I'm creating a button. I'll sew it and then turn it outside, and then have something like this, like a button, like I want to place a button on it. I'm sure by the time I sew it will understand better. Okay, so I've created it. As you can see, it's just like an inch space to just put buttons, just for decoration. Okay, so now that I've created it on both sides, what I'm going to do now is just to place them on each other. So I'm going to place them on each other and then sew. I'll place them together like this and then sew them together. So the center front is going to be looking like this. Okay, so now I've sewn it together, and this is what the center front is looking like. I hope you can see the buttonhole illusion right here. So now the next thing is for me to cut out my flare for the down part. I already have a detailed video tutorial on the channel on how to draft different types of flare. Okay, so I will not be going into that. You may want to check that out. I'll put the link in the description box. So now I've cut out my flare. It's 3 layers of flare with different lengths, and it's a 180-degree flare. Okay, and the radius I use for this is the initial radius of 44 inches. So when I'm sewing in my flare, I'll just try to stretch it out so that I can go around. So these are my 3 flares. Now I'm going to sew the flares together and then join it. I'm going to sew it together here just to hold it in place, and then join them together on the sides like this also, and then I will sew it to my dress. Okay, so I've joined the 3 flares together. You can see they're together now, and then I sew them on this side. So now the next thing is just to bring in the half length and then sew it round. So this joining part, I'll just try to make it to place it at the center back, or if you wish, you can just do the same thing we did here to finish off the edges also, and then create a buttonhole illusion. But I'm not doing that, so I'll just place the joining part here at the center back and then stretch it round and sew it around my flare. I've been sewn to it now. Let me turn to the other side so that I can see. I've sewn it round and I trimmed off the excess, so I'm going to be weaving it so that it can be neat. And this is what we have. And also I added a strap to the upper part. The strap is 7 inches long, and I just sew it to it like that. Okay, so this is what we have. You can see how cute this is looking. I'm going to use a serger to hem the rough edges of the flare. I can also use a bias, and I'll be adding these little buttons here just to beautify it. Okay, I'll be fixing it like this, so you can see how cute and easy to make this. Give this a try and let's see what you come up with. You can tag us with your post on Instagram, on Facebook at TIERED, and TIERED Sewing Simplified on Facebook. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.